Yay. All right. Well,
That's all I've never seen.
pretty close. Are you ready to roll?
I'm glad you're on.
All right, everyone. Here's my double mask. Well, if I can talk through it to get to the microphone here. And I'll call the meeting to order. So the City Council meeting of Monday, January 10th, 2022. Our first order is roll call.
Dave Anderson? Here. Carl Broberg?
Here.
Jennifer Mazias?
Here.
Mary McGrath?
Here.
Tom Namus?
Here.
Karen Spears Novacek?
Here.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Here.
Thank you. That was kind of funny. Jen, there's a slight pause like there is when you're online.
Yeah, I was looking for my microphone, and I guess if people can't hear me, I can go to a microphone, or I can stand up there.
If you grab that microphone actually, and then you can just hand it to someone if they need to use it.
Want me to do that?
That would be great.
Yeah, I hate to not be.
You can feel like a rock star holding your microphone.
Yeah, that's what I want to do. That's exactly what I want to do.
And then our next item, as long as you're standing, is the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just say a little bit.
Our next item is approval of minutes from the council meeting December 13th.
And Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of the city council meeting December 13, 2021.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion by Karen and the second I heard Tom first. Any questions, comments, edits? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our next item is approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the review of the monthly expenditures.
Motion by Karen, second by Laura. Are there any questions? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Laura Tulowitzki?
Yes.
Karen Novacek?
Yes.
Tom Namus?
Yes.
Mary McGrath?
Yes.
Jen Mazias?
Yes.
Carl Broberg?
Yes.
Dave Anderson?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next item is public comment. Is anyone here this evening for public comment? Please go ahead and step forward.
Mike Milczewski, 310 East 6th Street. I just want to let you know that I started a water drip on my place at 303 East 7th Street a few days ago. If I do get a letter, it takes a minimum of 5 days to go from Washburn to the cities to come back to my address. So I started it in advance of having it freeze up again.
Duly noted. Thanks, Nick.
Hello, I'm Jeremy Oswald. I live at 401 West 5th Street. Congratulations to all of you running for re-election who are running unopposed. Way to go. Thank you for putting in as much time as you do for the city of Washburn. I'm here to talk about the Westin Park agenda item. I was here at the October meeting and appreciate that you let me be involved in that discussion. I continue to believe the things that I brought up at that meeting. That the best place to add more RV camping is in the area that is already being used that way. That seemed to be rejected because there was a fear that the entire campground would have to be shut down for a season to make be the reason that that area is not considered. RFP at the end of the second paragraph, the needs and desires of the city have expansion for traditional RV camping. city have shifted away from the location for expansion for traditional RV camping. Has it? I was surprised to learn that this issue had not been discussed at the Parks Committee, which I think is a good place to talk about where the needs and desires of our community have gone regarding our parks and campgrounds. I haven't talked to a lot of people about this agenda item, but those that I did had not heard about this RFP being released. And in my opinion, any work that happens on Washburn's Lakeshore should get plenty of community input before money is spent on it. I know that the reason that this plan is coming up is that more camping is an excellent way to generate much needed additional revenue for Washburn. It's a good idea. This is a great way to bring in more money that is required to make the city run by you guys. I believe that the city should take some more time to get some buy-in from the community so the plan doesn't get paid for and we get 8 more steps down the road. The people of Washburn learn about it and they don't like it. I feel we saw this when there was the proposal to add more RV sites in Memorial Park and the housing on Omaha Street. I'd like to suggest sending this over to the Parks Committee, let that group weigh in and get some more buy-in from the community before $10,000 is spent on something that the people of Washburn may reject. I bring this all up so that a plan comes out that has the support from the community so that your time and resources are not spent in vain. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeremy, appreciate it. Anyone else for public comment? Anyone online? Then we will move on to mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. And so that I don't make Jeremy wait any longer, I will start with a presentation of an award to him. Jeremy has been with the city for 20 years, and plus now, plus a number of months. And I don't even have enough words to express the gratitude that this community owes you for that service to our community. And I know everyone in the community thanks you to being a valued part of the community and our police force that helps keep our community safe. And I hope you're around for another 20 years. So thank you very, very much for your service, Jeremy. And with that, I have a certificate. I wish that we were able to give you more than a certificate, like in private industry where you get something nice of value. But the value is in our hearts, and we're passing it along to you. This is a certificate that you can hopefully proudly hang on your wall in your office. Absolutely. Both ways, if that's what we were doing. We'll do the same with Scott. And I was going to give a thumbs up, but that's a little. Can't see that I'm smiling. They can see it in our eyes. And my hair Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And if you'd like to say anything.
Yes, I would actually, as much as I appreciate getting this and the recognition. I feel like I get it every day. And really, I came here for a job, but it's become much more than that. And just the ability to work in such a nice city with wonderful people and experiences just has been just rewarding. I feel like working here, I have the ability to help not only put band-aids on problems, but solve problems. And and then working with the wonderful people here. And through 20 years, there's obviously been some ups and downs, and but mostly through mayors, through councilors, through administrators, we've always been able to sit down and get things done, and it's always been done professionally. And so, as much as I've given to the city, they've given very much back to you. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
How about Joe? And thank you for taking time out of your day to come here tonight.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm having some being able to see over this giant mask here, so just a moment. On to a couple of announcements. One, I wanted to thank everyone who has donated towards the removal of the boat. It was really, the second summer in a row where we just had this really painful thing happening down on our lakefront. It's really getting old, and I hope next summer is going to be free of controversy. But it was very helpful to have some people donate to that, and here's my note. We received $2,995 in donations from 8 individuals, and the cost to the city is $5,562.50. So the balance, about $2,500, will be invoiced to Mr. Jackson, and we'll see what happens from there. But that does help reduce the burden for all of us in the community, everyone who donated. So again, thank you very much. And it's gone. Just in time for ice in, right? And then the next announcement is that there is going to be another public meeting with the DOT. It's going to be January 26th. I believe it's at 6 o'clock at the club again. And this meeting is taking place because they came up with another alternative for a reroute during the construction project. And it's the information is on our website. There's a button right on the landing page that takes you to the information on the reconstruction project. This is now option 3 of the different options for the reroutes. The reason they're bringing this forward is that they crunched the numbers and looking at our challenges trying to get a reroute through a residential neighborhood and the work that they would have to do on the roads, and then looking at the home and drive option, which we did look at already a little bit. They're proposing that if we agree to do the project all in one fell swoop, they would, meaning the whole Bayhill Street would be closed the whole time of the construction project. We'll be able to guarantee that it would happen more quickly within one. And if you have any questions prior to that, obviously you can call here and speak with one of the staff about it. But that is my second announcement, and I think my final one. Then the next item is an appointment to the Plan Commission. And I think in your packet, you have a copy of Nick Malczewski's application, which, as you can tell, he is an extremely qualified person to be able to help us on the Plan Commission. And I'm really excited to be able to recommend his appointment to the Plan Commission. I had the opportunity to meet with Nick for about an hour one day, and we talked about a lot of things, and really excited to be able to bring him to the committee and have him help us with his knowledge and experience, and also his experience not only throughout the state but here in Washburn. Nick's from Washburn originally, I believe, or yep. So thank you, Nick, for your application. It came at an opportune time when we did have an opening, and I would look for a recommendation for his approval.
I move approval of the appointment of Michael Malachowski to the Planning Commission.
Second.
All right, I've got Karen on a motion and Dave on a second. Are there any questions? Comments? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, thank you. And staff will be in contact with you, and you can let them know if you'd like anything printed out to review ahead of time. And we have a meeting a week from Thursday, I believe. Excellent, thank you. All right. Our next item is discussion and action on conditional use permit application for accessory dwelling unit at 705 Evergreen Court, property zone R2, Orion Orestovich petitioner. That is tab 2 in your packet. And this is an item that did go before Plan Commission already, and there was a public hearing at Plan Commission. We did have some public comment, and the Plan Commission is recommending approval with a specific condition that all, I'm looking to see where it is on here. Give me a moment. That all other applicable codes and ordinances must be adhered to prior to an occupancy permit being issued. Was the additional condition that was placed on that recommendation. Does anyone care to make a motion on this to get our discussion going?
So moved.
Second. Motion by Mary to approve with that condition. And a second by Laura. Correct? Questions?
I'm curious why this, that had to be specified. Is there just something that needs to be updated or, do you have any comment on any of the work that has to be done?
I can make an attempt to explain it briefly. I believe there's some equipment outdoors or something like that that needs to get put away. So in effect, the building of this structure will take care of the ordinance that is not being followed. Do you have anything else to add?
Thanks.
Is that your recollection, Dave, on the Plan Commission? Okay, and you were there too, wasn't there? Anything further anyone has? Seeing nothing? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent, we'll get that paperwork going. Have a good night, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item, discussion and action on selection of engineering firm for creation of Thompson's Westin Park Campground expansion plan. Tab 3. So I did receive, and I think everyone received, a letter from a citizen. She had asked that I read this during public comment, which I did not do because I did read through it and it was longer than 3 minutes. So I just wanted to maybe point out a few things, and then if anyone from the public cares to get a copy of this letter, it will be included, I believe, in the packet online. And the letter, I believe, Mary Ross wrote the letter, and I believe that she was thinking that we were acting on the whole campground plan, so she made comments on things that we aren't looking at right now, in addition to what we are looking at right now. Number 1, the existing campground, keep the existing roads, but change the site spacing. Number 2, the overflow campground on the hill. She's suggesting move the road to the middle and put 10 pads with electricity along the back edge for RVs. The Sixth Street field, she's saying to keep that open. Number 4, yurts and glamping, she thinks are unnecessary. Number 5, don't lose the road by the boat landing. She's saying that a boardwalk is unnecessary. Number 6, historical marker should be better signed down at the site so people know when they turn for historical lakefront trail, they know where they're going and what it's about. 7, 2 in comment, and so that is negated a little bit by that. But she's saying basically something near the baseball fields, I think, would be her desired location for that. And then number 9, no need for an elaborate kayak launching space. I'm assuming she means the one glamping site, I think that was specifically designed for kayakers. And so, thank you to Mary Ross for her time and energy in putting her comments on those things. The other thing that I just did want to mention before we move forward with any motion is that I had talked with Jeremy the other day, and he did have a couple of good questions that I didn't know the answers to. One of the things that I did find out is that this was referred to the Parks Committee back on May 13th of 2019, which is almost 3 years ago now, and no action was taken by the Parks Committee.
Correct.
Now, granted, I don't think there has been any prompting for a reminder, and there have been many issues that the Parks Committee has gotten pulled into to deal with in the meanwhile. But it was, in fact, referred to the Parks Committee on that date.
What was referred to the Parks Committee for them to do what?
You don't happen to have that motion somewhere handy, Scott pulled up the minutes, and it was, he'll pull it up and you can let me know what the wording was on the motion. So at this time, the council decided last time that we would like to move forward with some options for how to expand camping. Obviously taking into consideration the plan that was done. But tonight, the decision is really just to choose the engineering firm. That is the only action to be taken tonight. I do believe that as we progress in this discussion, we will be getting some more public input, and I'm sure Parks Committee will want to bring up this issue. Scott, go ahead.
So at the May 13th, 2019 meeting, there was an agenda item at the request of Mr. Nimus to request expanding RV camping at Thompson's West End Park. There was a discussion by the council, and it was moved by Broberg and seconded by Novacek to refer to the committee for further review. I do recall that meeting, and I do recall subsequent park meetings when that was brought up at the park meeting, but no further action had been taken by the park committee on that matter.
Yeah, 3 years ago. I mean, I don't remember the park committee ever talking about getting public comment on it. Oh, get it. I'm afraid of the microphone. I don't remember the park committee going into great detail on, looking at sites where it would be recommended, comparing, like getting numbers or going out to the public. Like, we didn't develop a plan for it. And so, I mean, maybe that's an oversight of the Parks Committee and what we need to do. But, I don't remember us doing any extensive work on it besides maybe a couple of discussions. I don't know, Tony, do you remember anything on that?
No, and May is before I started working
for the city, so I guess.
There you go. You know, I mean, we've been going in and doing inventory of our parks and things like that, but that has never been recently an agenda that has come up that the Parks Committee has been working on by any means.
Tom,
I was at the meeting.
whom you would like to do some engineering work on some potential campsites, which was decided at the last council meeting, that we would like that to happen. The details of which need to be worked out. So if anyone would care to make a motion on any of the firms,
I would make a motion that, we hire players to do the engineering.
okay, is there a second to that motion? Do I have to ask 3 times? Is there a second? Is there a second? No second to that, so that motion fails, correct?
Well, having spoken with them about the RFP, but so their responsiveness, I think, will be very important in this because it is of concern to so many people, and there'll be a lot of contention over what's done. So it'd be nice to know that it's something that will be responding quickly, and and I hear they look into their facts and dig up what they need to do a good job. So, but now I'm wondering if it wouldn't be wise to, since I read in the kind of memo that it was possible to ask to do interviews, if we couldn't combine that with a public information meeting, or to bring them into the Parks Committee meeting. I'm curious what anyone else thinks
This is
about.
just for choosing the engineer you wanted to do?
Yep, but two birds with one stone, could we have, instead of choosing one and planning to hire them right off the bat, use the interview as a way to also make the information that we're doing this a little more public knowledge, and have it go to the Parks Committee and then come back to us next month to hire. Do you think that'd be helpful for it to come to the Parks Committee to,
I mean, I don't know the proper, like, do we have discussions on them
we have to
before we make the motion?
Motion to,
Is there a motion? Did you make a motion?
Or you're just considering them?
I would, okay, yeah, sure. So I'll make a motion that we, request Cooper Engineering, come to be interviewed and in combination, or I don't know if it needs to be at the Parks Committee or if it should just go to the Parks Committee as well. That's a separate thing.
So the council would interview the companies, or it's whoever the motion
How would you
says?
normally do? I've never been to an interview with an engineering company. So do they normally just come and talk to you?
Typically, how we would handle that is we would have a selected group. It's usually a combination of staff, possibly the mayor and or a council member or two that may be involved in the project. For example, that's how we hired heirs for the Bayfield Street project. We had the relevant staff involved with the project, with the mayor, and I believe, was it finance committee? I can't remember. I think it was the finance committee for that one. So it's going to depend on the situation. We did not, for that one, we did a formal RFP process. For this project being a small project, we decided not to do a formal RFP. We decided to solicit firms that we were most familiar with already. I have no objection to heirs. We are working with heirs on 2 projects currently. We have started a relationship with Cooper Engineering as well with the work at the marina. And there was another firm that we considered that Ashland has recently used on some park projects as well. So those are the ones we just decided to select as opposed to opening it up to everyone to make it a more complex process, which is what we were not going to do. We're trying to keep it simple.
Are you suggesting that asking to have interviews would make it more complicated?
I don't, that's a project they may wish to take on, but as far as the selection of the engineering firm, in my opinion, it would not be necessary. I'm comfortable with whoever we would select. I think they would be competent to do the job, which is what we'd be looking for. And I would be looking for a firm that is going to be knowledgeable of the engineering issues that the city faces. So,
And if we were to just choose a firm tonight, are we able then to direct the process or going through that process?
so at the October meeting, what was decided was that we would be looking at two potential locations. The we refer to right now as the overflow campground and the first field to the east of the boat ramp, we also refer to as the overflow parking for the book across the bay. And those are the two areas that the council had asked that we study in detail for RV, full service sites, right down to more primitive sites, so that we get the cost spectrum of what it would take for the necessary improvements at those locations. So that is what the cost of these proposals is based on. That was what the council requested. So if there's further work that you are going to be asking of these firms, that will change these prices.
Scott, can you say that again? When you say the full spectrum of, I mean, I guess I didn't catch that, and I don't really, so you're talking about number 4, what is the cost benefit analysis of locating the different camping styles at the various locations? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Well, I guess I'd still keep my motion to, I guess I'm accepting or requesting a meeting with Cooper Engineering based on their responsiveness and willingness to, their level of interest they've shown in the project.
So you're saying to interview them? Do an interview with them or just see
You know
them?
what, I guess yeah, how do I just give it up? Because I really, I don't know, I feel like there's still some.
If I can suggest, I think you're going to the bigger picture right now. And what we're after are the answers to these 4 questions, which will be presented and have either hit back or acceptance down the line. And so until we have this information, we're not in the position to choose either spot or any type. That's the job they're being hired to do.
Okay.
And the bigger picture starts coming after. We can't do anything without information, and that's all we're asking them, is to figure out basically the science, the engineering, the cost, and then we start weighing it, and then the public can be there. And like I said, there's either going to be hit back or not. There can be certainly negotiations down the line, but we need information, and that is
But I think
this.
what Laura's getting to is the big picture is the fact that we have a plan, and we decided in October to cognitively deviate from the plan, and nothing we are getting engineered on is in the location and in the plan. And we didn't go to public comment for it. So, I mean, I can go on. I'll just be very open and honest. I did not think it would be table money, and we're willing to spend $10,000 on something that we haven't gotten public comment on. We're getting public comment on a reroute during our infrastructure redo for 8th Street, that's temporary. And we get public comment and we do public hearings on things for way less than our friend development and deviating from a plan that our community wanted. Okay.
Did we have a motion, Laura, yet, or no?
Well, I did form a motion, but I will withdraw it because you're reminding me of why I voted against it as well, because I felt like there needed to be, something in between.
I made a
Spending the
motion
money.
to
thought you had made a
engage
motion.
Cooper Engineering to put together estimates of what it would take to develop the two areas in question.
Okay, and I'm just gonna address real quick, Jen's motion, was not, so the item is discussion and action on selection of engineering firm.
As I recall it, I was already trying to find the word withdraw to say, I want to take it back. I don't want to go to
Sure.
Korea until we had discussed, because I was having reservations about the $10,000 without, more input from the
Sure.
community, more
Yep.
commitment. and
So you
support.
withdrew your motion.
And my
I had
motion
already
was
done it.
to table, which I can make a motion to table, right?
Yes.
I can make a motion to table the selection of the RFP proposals until it goes to the planning, and send it to the park committee and get public comment.
So Carl, hold tight there with your motion. Jen has made a motion to table this.
Second that.
And Laura has seconded that. Are there any questions? Okay.
There's no discussion with the table.
So all in favor of tabling this, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Motion fails. Now, Carl,
Make a motion to engage the services of Cooper Engineering to provide cost estimates for development of the two areas in question.
okay, motion by Carl,
I'll second that.
second by Tom. Now, is there any discussion?
You mentioned making sure we revisit this original plan and take that into consideration. And is that already something that, is already being talked about within this quote of $10,000 for Cooper to look at the original plan as well as?
So, my understanding is that the council has taken into consideration the fact that this plan was created by an ad hoc committee with council approval back in 2015. And it has sat on the shelf since then. And in order to move forward in a direction that the council has decided they want to go with developing some sites, even though they may not be exactly what the plan says, the council has decided to move forward with that plan. The decision as to, after what's presented by the engineering firm with different options and different costs and things like that, at that point. But I don't believe we are asking the engineering firm
$10 is also an issue of, are we for sure doing this before we spend the $10,000 to get these quotes?
Yeah, and I think the desire is to add some additional campsites so that we can get some more revenue. And it's just a matter of which sites in which places would be decided after looking at the proposal or the plan, the plan that the engineering firm would come up with. Dave?
So, adding sites in the existing location, did we have a breakdown on the 2015 proposal of what it would cost just for that?
It was,
Sites in the existing zone?
I can't remember if the plan,
And I think to me, that's the problem, like those kind of questions. Like, I feel like we're getting there, but I just think like, the overflow camping area, like great ideas, right? But we're kind of, I think we just made a snap judgment and like, okay, let's just do this. I feel like there's lots of investigations like that we could do, like, yeah, what does it cost to do it in the existing area? You know, and where we were gonna have the kind of the glamping or whatever, which was one field over, like, what does that cost? Like, we kind of just jumped on one versus looking at the whole plan, spending time and energy working with the community and figuring out what piece are we gonna move forward on? Because I agree, I think we have some great opportunities. I'm not totally against some of the stuff that we're looking at. I really appreciate the RFP that had the 4 points in there and that's talking about the different levels. But when I think about, like, we just need more RV camping, I run campgrounds for 3 years. Like, I think, yeah, we do need more RV camping, but other sites that aren't RV, those could be more desirable too. And that brings a whole different suite of people into our community for, like, those glamping sites. And so I just think we haven't investigated enough. And that's why I just can't get behind it. I'm not totally against it. I just feel like we're just not there. And we can get there. Like, you know, I appreciate, and my sincere apologies for us not moving forward on this on the park committee. You know, like, maybe that should have been like our mission, Tony. Like, we just never brought it back up after 3 years. So I feel like we have some opportunities to do something a little bit different. I just think, like, jumping in and spending 10 grand to get something that our community is not going to be happy with, I'm just nervous about. And I've said my piece, you know.
Are we sure they're not gonna be happy with it?
That's true.
Huh?
Okay.
No, we're not sure. No, I'm not sure.
But we will find out. Tom?
The people I've been talking to, and Mary Ross is in favor of the overflow, putting camping sites there. She's against the other one, but the people I've been talking to, they're for going to the overflow because the city needs extra revenue. And as far as that park plan, if that's done and then we investigate and see what these campers like if it's a 20-foot barrier space, then leave those spots open and then we can do the others.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to camping at the overflow park either, but I don't know if again, it's just not following the plan. And, you know, you've talked to Mary Ross, you've talked to Mike, I've talked to plenty of people that aren't in favor of, you know, the overflow camping area because that was supposed to be a community space for an activity, you know, so we can go back and forth. We don't know. That's the
Right, they'll be able to provide options, like, this is what. You know.
I do know, but I also
some
said
information.
typically before I'm done, but I said typically you plan, go there. And I'm not saying it's horrible, I'm just saying that I don't know if it hits mark. And to me, we talk all the time about spending $2,000 and $3,000, but we don't want to do that, but we're willing to do $10,000, and there is no way that we're going to do $10,000 on something and not go with it.
Offensive right now, and I'm sorry I am that way, but when you say we have talked to this to ad nauseum since the late 70s, and it always gets held up with public opinion and public feedback, and we don't even have full information. I go back to also, any plan on our shelves can be nixed-nayed and thrown out by any council. That's why people are re-elected and run for election, is to either go with what's there or change what's there and change with the times. So we literally could throw this plan out, and in many ways, the big picture where existing camping has been, in a sense, put aside, if not completely tossed out. Other plans, how many times have you been involved with the walking trail, and how many times has that changed? So, I mean, with every council comes new ideas. With every council seems to come, not every council, because we can't afford the plans we had, and more plans we're going after. This is for information, and how can we answer questions to the public? Like, if we expand the campgrounds, how much money are we going to make, and how quickly will they pay this, or will the sites pay off? We don't freaking know that. We need somebody else to go out there and do that for us, because there's not a person sitting here that has the education to go out and do that. So until we have information that will answer the public's question, we are the gerbil on the treadmill. So if we all want to continue like the little boxed animal, then let's keep going down this trail. If we want answers, we need to move forward with somebody that's going to get them. I'm with you. Nickel diming the budget every year bites, but we know we have this. We know it's set, the money, we have it set aside within the park fund, and we'll see where we go. The group that was here previously gave us some generic numbers that were based on 2015. Certainly, as we all know, the numbers have changed, so they're almost irrelevant, We did not go back with them because they sold us such a pie in the sky plan at $10 freaking million or how many $1 million that we knew we could never do. So if we can do expansion for less than the mill or whatever, we need money for the city. Our campgrounds have proven that they make money for the city. There will be an expense up front. There will be information we get. How quickly will those sites pay themselves off? But if we continue to just tread along here, at the end of any of our next two-year terms, the next people coming in are going to be having the same freaking conversation. So that's my thing.
I'm just going to point out one thing in the campground plan, under project phasing, which is under implementation on page 39. The priorities are listed there. There are 3 priorities. The first priority, the first bulleted item is 30 new campsites for what the area can accommodate comfortably and aesthetically. I think that's a perfect priority to focus on and do something about by moving forward with an engineering firm, giving us those options that we can discuss and bring out to the public for their input.
Curious if there's interest in any other comment from anyone in the public that has bothered to come out tonight for opening the floor.
Is that a motion?
No, I'm looking for interest in opening the floor. So I moved to open the floor.
Motion to open the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Laura, second by Jen to open the floor for discussion to the public. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. The floor is open. Would anyone like to give input from the public? Jeremy, please step forward.
Thanks, I'll just make it really brief, that the expansion of campsites, I believe, was for the area that already has RV camp in it, I could be wrong. So, and that wasn't even considered in the RFPs. So that's, you did, on page 39, 30 new campsites. I believe the recommendation was in that current area that has RV camping, and that's something that you guys rejected.
Mary?
Respectively, please. It wasn't in my recollection, so our recollections are different.
You don't need to address me.
Oh, okay, but I'm saying, I understand where you're coming from because we sat on that committee together. That committee walked from Washington Avenue all the way through the existing area on the backside of what is now the overflow, looking to possibly put sites in there. We looked at the idea of putting sites on the Bayfield Street side of Lakeview Holman Drive. So we covered that entire section there and came down to the plan that was approved, which completely redesigned the existing campground, identified yet again the overflow, identified that this could be, in my recollection, that the fields that is parking lot for Book Across the Bay. But we walked it all and found the most promising sites to be identified as campsites. So in my recollection, again, the 30 sites was not limited to. 30 was somewhat of a not a random number, but something that we felt would have a financial impact to the campgrounds. But again, knowing we could not put another 30 here is where the redesign came. But that entire property along the lakefront was looked at and identified as either feasible or not for improving the number of sites available.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public care to give input as long as the floor is open? Seeing none, I will consider a motion to close the floor.
Move to close the floor.
I'll second it.
Motion by Carl, second by Tom to close the floor on this item. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're back to our motion that is on the floor to Cooper. Karen?
Just a comment about item number 4 in terms of the scope, different camp styles. I mean, I think that much of our comments have been regarding the RVs, but I think we need to remember, as Scott outlined earlier, is that the scope of this work is not restricted just to RVs. So my hope would be is that the work product that we get from the firm that we select will talk about camping, rustic camping, RVs, and cover, the whole continuum of what camping sites might be available. And then I think, as the mayor has indicated, to go out and to say to the community at large, okay, this is a new way to look at what our existing property, the space that we have, give us your comments and input on it. But, I do agree with Mary, we need to move forward, and we're just to approve Carl's motion.
Okay, any other comments?
So, just a quick add, it looked like it was right around, $2 million for the expansion in, the existing, RV site. So from that, we can probably extrapolate a inflated number of today's construction, cost, to be, probably 2.5 or 2.7, whatever that may be. And so we know that. I mean, I don't think we necessarily need to ask the new engineering firm, which would cost us extra to have them look into. But I think we do need to understand what we're looking at and have some data in front of us. We need to strike when the iron's ready, and it's been kicked down the road too long. I think that we just need to understand what we have, and what we're looking at and what we can afford. And, it costs money to get that data. It would cost us money if we tried to get that data ourselves. Because it would be city resources getting it done. So, I'm in favor of spending the $10,000 to get this engineering firm on board.
Okay, any other comments?
Just for clarification, the area, which is number 2, right? In the Westin plan, that area is designated for I think rustic camping sites or something.
Mm-hmm.
So
that is within the plan.
That is within the plan. So I just hope that, because to me, when I look at that kind of stuff and I think about the restrooms and stuff that goes with that versus RV and paving. So, again, I appreciate that being part of the RFP. I think the $2 million I'd be interested at some point, and we don't have to do it, obviously. Hopefully this can come to the Parks Committee and we can start to do some investigation of bits and pieces of the West End plan that could be, maybe researched a little bit more and looked into. Because I do think there's opportunity. I know that people like their space, but I mean, I don't know. I think if we had spaces close together, people are still they're still going to come. I mean, if you go to any other campground in the city, I think there's still opportunity to be able to, hey, you know what? I get to talk to, and so when I speak and you make those kind of judgments, I get to talk to. I'm just saying that I do think there's opportunity to expand RV camping at the current site. I'm done.
Thank you.
I don't appreciate the atmosphere at all. So
That was the first, thing that I noticed.
we've
about
always
the
been very respectful in this room, always. And so when people talk and people are doing this and this, it's just not, I don't do that to people, so I don't appreciate
I
people
was
doing
about
that
to
to me.
call for order. So, thank you for your comments. Did you have a comment that you'd like to make, Carl?
One of the things that's nice about the campground is that I've had people comment on its spacing. And so we want to destroy that, the thing that makes it a good, unique spot, and move them all together. That makes no sense to me at all.
Okay. And we have had that comment come forward, and I think we keep going back and forth with the comments on both sides, not just here at council, but all over, the comments have come in. So, we have a motion on the table in a second. Are there any other questions or discussion on that motion?
I just have a couple comments. But like I said, I'm not totally against the 2015 plan. We have to talk to the campers down there to see what distance they're fine with and not push them in too tight, because they've all said they like that space. The overflow, I've had people tell me they would pay way more money than what they pay a year to be on top of that overflow because of the view. That's the only view like that on this lake. We should use that to make revenue for the city.
Okay.
That's all I have to say on that.
I'm gonna bring us back to, the motion and focusing our discussion on that at this point. Does anyone else have discussion? And I'm sorry, the floor is not open right now. There is someone from the public who would like to, make a comment. We have closed the floor. Is there any desire to reopen the floor?
It's brief.
We did.
I make a motion to open the floor.
One second.
We have a motion to open the floor and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Jeremy?
It's just two quick things. Thank you for opening the floor and thanks for letting me participate. You're going with Cooper?
That is the motion on the.
Yep, so right in there, they say, given the size for each new location, the maximum number of short-term rental sites must be determined for recreational vehicles versus tent camping. So I don't know if that's saying that they're rejecting tent camping or not, but we might want to change your motion there. And then the other thing is if you don't want to expand the sites, or people should pay for those big sites. That's another way to raise money, which I think you're looking for, is to raise money. So why not raise fees instead of expanding? Thanks to God. Thanks again.
Okay, thanks. Jeremy. Anyone else from the public as long as the floor is open? I would look for a motion to close the floor.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Motion by Tom, second by Karen to close the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I am going to call a vote on the motion that is on the table to select Cooper Engineering Firm for the creation of a potential campground expansion plan. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion carries. Moving on to our next item, discussion and action on payment/reimbursement options related to city services that may be provided for 2023 and beyond. Book across the bay events. You just have 4 in your. And we have a memo here outlining some options for what we could do in the future to make sure that the city's costs are covered for the services that are provided during that event. I think there potentially could be some additional information from Tony. If I could ask you to share your findings when you spoke with the city of Hayward? About
Sure.
how they do their, I think that would be helpful to know.
Sure, at our last meeting when we discussed this, I guess the comment was brought up that the city of Hayward charges a fee per participant for the Rookabinder. I called the clerk for the city of Hayward and spoke with her today, and they don't do that. They charge the Rookabinder outright their costs.
And then it's up to the person.
Yeah, however the Rookabinder gets that, that income to pay it, they charge them for their costs.
Sure.
Full cost, Tony? I mean, they
Yes,
make it, okay.
Has the book across the bay, has the fees increased the past couple of years?
No, I
Not
think
much.
it's been the same.
Been the same.
My daughter got her, application in the mail because she participated recently. It was, I think, $25 still for a student and 30 or something. And that was the same that she paid a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I don't think it's gone up in the past couple of years.
One thing that I was going to suggest potentially, if we were going to consider the fee per participant model, and, if we came up with a fee per participant and we ended up with more money than it would be to cover the city's expenses, I was going to suggest that we automatically give that money to the library, since they don't get money from this event anymore and everyone thinks that they do. And I thought that would be a good way to utilize any extra funds that may have been inadvertently gotten that way. But it would be much simpler just to charge the amount that it costs the city. And I don't know if you have to do it then based on the previous year's services provided. That's what you would charge the next year, or if the bill would come after the fact so that they can plan for how they're going to raise the money or what.
I would think we would have enough experience with doing this event that when they request services, we would have a pretty good idea of what it would cost and just charge a flat fee, make it simple.
And know ahead of time what services they would like.
Right.
So after this year, when they have the reduced EMS services, they'll know whether they want to go back to paying to have.
We can tell them in advance, and half of the expense was for having 3 ambulances and a snowmobile and an UTV down there with full crews. We can certainly tell them in advance what that's gonna cost. Because we do it for, when we send an ambulance down to the Berkeliner, we know in advance. And they pay for that.
Sure.
So we certainly do that. The cost of putting up the no parking signs, probably get a pretty good estimate of how much effort that's gonna take from Public Works and anything else. And just to make it simple, charge a flat fee, and if we have to adjust that flat fee the following year based on experience and the requested services, then we adjust it. Just make it simple. I don't think we want to get into the adding a fee onto the ticket sort of thing. That'd be complicated at best.
I would just like to add, in reference to Carl's comment there, it's very likely that they don't receive a bill for their toilets before the event. So they would be invoiced after the fact.
And they know, but they know what the fee is gonna be for those toilets.
And we have a good estimate of what that is. Again, as we discussed last time, depending on the snow, I mean, that can change Public Works, not EMS, we would know that.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyone care to make a motion on this at all?
Make a motion, we charge them a flat fee.
I'll second that.
Okay, so a flat fee that is set.
Adjustable, yeah, set, but if it needs to be adjusted, it can be adjusted in following years if it goes up or goes down.
So rather than invoice a specific amount for the costs that are paid, or are you talking about invoicing for the actual cost, that kind of a flat fee?
That's what I want, the actual cost.
Invoicing for the actual cost?
Right.
Okay.
I'm confused. Is that number one or number
Yeah,
I know,
two?
that's where I
yeah,
was
yeah.
at.
I was
Yeah.
trying to decide.
I meant number two.
Oh.
No, not number two.
No. I'm looking at three on the bottom.
One is the invoicing, three is the flat fee.
Set in advance based on our best estimate of what it costs will be. That's the one I want.
Okay,
Number one.
number three.
Three.
And how would that flat fee be, how would it be calculated?
Well, let's go with, okay, so that's the motion for the flat fee set in advance based on our best estimate of what the cost will be. Is there a second to that motion?
I second it.
Okay. Thank you. So motion by Tom, second by Carl. Then, how would you determine what?
Yeah, so now, before we vote on that,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how you would decide that number and keep it reasonable and not discouragement for, I wouldn't want to discourage the event from happening. I don't know that there are a lot of options in there for any of the tasks that have to happen that cost public work hours. Was there anything that they could do themselves if they had the option to cut back on costs that the city might invoice otherwise?
I'm not sure I understand the difference between a flat fee and invoicing for the actual amount.
Invoicing would be after, right, when you actually know what the amount would be. The
Correct.
flat fee would be
The
an
flat fee
assumption,
is-
an average.
So if you end up spending more time and money because there's more snow or something, we're gonna lose out on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they, they, open the registration in November, is that correct? Somewhere, I think November.
Is that what it is?
I mean, we haven't even gotten into snow season yet.
To know what our estimates are.
You're right, and, they're gonna wanna know some sort of budget number. And, on what they're, is it even, the first question that came into my head when you had suggested we give the money back to the library, can we do that? I mean, is it
I don't know why not.
legal to do that? Or,
Matt?
Yeah, it would, I'd say that money would go into the general fund and could choose to do whatever you wanted with it.
okay.
So,
The only reason I say, I would be in favor of a fee per participant is then the book across the bay knows exactly what it's gonna be, because it's $2 every time somebody signs up. And they know that $2 just goes to the city.
But don't you see that going up and down too, depending on the number of people that sign up?
and it's gonna be the same amount of work,
Yeah.
even if it's less people to get it ready.
Would be my question.
So let's keep with this, the motion that's on the table and discuss the pros and cons of that one first. So you could base it on, I think it was brought up somewhere like a 5-year history, combined with the knowing what services they're asking for.
They can ask us for what services and we can put together an estimate for flat fee.
Okay. Laura, sorry. Oh, no, and then Jen.
It was for, yeah, both of you, when I down that you were, I'm right in assuming that you would vote for
They would know in advance their fee is gonna be from the city, so they can set their price. They can calculate that into whatever price structure they've got, they know in advance. They request, okay, I want 3 ambulances, the snowmobile, the UTV, and all these, no parking, and so we have a rough idea what that's gonna be. Then we tell them what the cost of the year, and then they can build it into the
2022, so that they know what's going into their.
If they decided they didn't want any MS, then we take that out of the fee.
I guess I was kind of going through the notes from last month on what we were talking about. I mean, I know we want to be reimbursed, but we're kind of coming up with the best solution for us, which is great. But I don't know why we just don't work with Book Across the Bay and what works best for them. you know, like, we talked, and we have 3 options here, but, I mean, for us, we just want to make sure that we're compensated for our work. And so what works best for them? Does it work best for them to, you know, get something, a bill from us, like afterwards for just what we did, and they just estimate it? You know, I guess for me, I'll vote for either 1 or 3 is fine, but I don't know why we just wouldn't sit down with Book Across the Bay and work with them more as like a partner and say, what works best for you? We need to be compensated. How would you like us to do it? That just seems like the reasonable way to do it versus coming up with a motion of what we want to do and then them going, well, can you just do this instead?
And I think, to your point, Jen, I think that we're just talking about what our position is going into the discussion. So this is just trying to get where we're coming from. It's not necessarily saying this is a hard and fast, this is how we're going to do it, because we haven't had those discussions yet.
Our position last time was like, we're gonna vote for this, but in the future, we want to be reimbursed for our work.
Right.
So, I mean, I think we already have our position laid out there. It's a matter of the methodology of the best way to get compensated for the work. So you bill them afterwards, you do a flat, you know, I would just work with Book Across the Bay, so.
Thank you, Tom.
We should be able to go and look, take a 3-year average of what things would cost. Because like Carl said, if they don't want the 3 ambulances down there, that comes out of the cost. And it's a flat fee, so they know in advance, so they can change their rates instead of at the end of the year, oh, we ain't got no money to pay you. That's what I'm looking at.
Laura?
I feel like the weather, I mean, there are only variables as to whether it's held at all or whether it's a minimal turnout and sign up. And there's so many variables that I just don't know about taking 3 years, you know, out of the sky as an average. But I remember now that we did discuss it last time, and there was some willingness to meet and talk with either one of you or both, how it works even. Was there any more communication?
I think this discussion was happening first, and then we said we were gonna use them like in April after this year's event.
Okay.
Was the timeline of how we were gonna proceed, Karen?
Because that's exactly what the first paragraph of the memo says.
Yeah.
In the future, so staff know what direction we're going to suggest that discussion in April, in what direction that discussion goes.
Right.
So, you know, we may or may not want a formal motion, but I think it is to give Tony and Scott some direction in terms of, okay, because remember when they came to our meeting, they said, we didn't anticipate this, we've got our budget already done, which is legitimate, you know, I mean, they have to plan in advance, but I think we're looking at 23, thus we're going to meet in April to say, okay, for 23, you know, what's the best way to get our costs covered?
This is how we suggest.
And, you know, I mean, we can just say staff go and look after the city, as we know staff will do. Or we can say, well, as you go into that meeting in April, suggest that, you know, we look at a flat fee or a menu. Here's our menu of what we can offer you, and what do you want on the menu? Well, we want 1 ambulance. We want road signs up. We want, you know, the parking cloud. Okay, those are the 3 things we want on the menu, and this is how much the menu will cost. Those 3 items are gonna cost.
So it seems to me
I think
one or
it's menu
three
driven.
would serve the same purpose. 1 or 3, to give them some information and some options, so they can say, you know, we'll call if we need an ambulance, or we have a crew of people that will post. I mean, I don't know.
So, back to the motion, we have a motion to proceed with a flat fee being our preferred method as we enter those discussions. Is that accurate for both of you for that motion? Okay. Any other discussion on that motion?
So, I agree the flat fee is probably the easiest thing to do. Should we break that fee down in a menu type option as Karen suggests? Should that be in motion?
I don't think so. I think the details can be determined. I don't think we need to get into that level.
But that's kind of what I had in my mind. There's going to be a menu, and you select what you want to buy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other discussion on the motion?
I don't feel Yeah,
Oh,
there's,
you have a motion on the table.
Yeah. okay.
So,
With the menu option, they'll know exactly what they want to choose, what they want, how much they're gonna have to raise their fees.
so technically that's not in the motion, but a flat fee
Right.
is. However, we get to that flat fee,
Right,
which will have to be determined.
right, but for discussion points, as again, for, you know, they're gonna, that they will know how
Yeah.
much they're gonna have to raise their fees next year to cover that cost.
Exactly. And we have already told them what everything costs, you know, in the past. So they already kind of have an idea, and that you would have that discussion, what do you want, this is what it would cost, come up with whatever that fee is. Mary?
Yeah, I'm kind of with Jen. 1 and 3 are so similar.
Yeah.
I know we have a motion, but they're so similar. And it just seems like, I mean, I'll vote for wherever
I
y'all
think
start going.
The difference is, the first one is bill after the fact. So there.
1 is, yes, invoice
Yeah,
after,
and-
yeah.
And the third one is, you establish the fee before the fact.
And wouldn't they be looking at the ballpark of just say, you know, $1,000 to $2,000? You know, it's way more than that, but, so they know where the ballpark is that?
Well, I look at the first one, in my mind, is okay, we keep track of how many hours an ambulance sits down there, how many hours Public Works spends.
Correct.
And then we bill, we have a fee, a rate.
Attached to that, yeah.
Attached to that, and then after everything is said and done, we create an invoice.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the other, in my mind, is that, okay, we give them a menu, here's what an ambulance is gonna be, here's what posting all the signs are, here's the snow plowing, assuming a reasonable amount of snow. This is what your upfront cost is gonna be, you can bill that in.
So my question though is, there could be lots of plowing one year and
Right,
not
right.
so much
So
the
that's-
next year.
So that's
So
the wild
going
card.
back to that,
That's the wild card.
That's the
Yeah.
wild
So
part,
if you
but-
agree to a flat fee ahead of time, the city could either lose or make money
Correct.
on the deal.
Yeah.
If we lose money, so be it, that's our contribution.
It wouldn't be
if-
that much, because
It wouldn't be that much, because we have a pretty good idea. If we get more money than it costs us, we give it to the library. Or do whatever else the council wants to do with it, I don't know.
Or it would make up for the prior year loss.
yeah, there you go.
That's the whole, you know,
I like that better, yeah.
Yeah.
flat fee,
Yeah,
you know, it's done a lot in the construction industry, you know, you take the good with the bad and the law of averages.
Right.
You know,
So,
hopefully is in your favor. Yeah.
so we do have a motion on the table.
yeah, yeah.
That I'm gonna bring us back to. Are there any other questions or discussion on the motion, which is to proceed with a flat fee scenario? Laura?
I would rather that we weren't voting on this at all until there was more conversation with this group. But I'm going on faith there will be communication and reasonable discussion on what we're, for them to, because, I mean, the man who came and talked to us was very reasonable and really wants it to all work. And so, yeah, just saying flat fee, I mean, because what you were describing didn't sound like a flat fee, it was a series of flat fees that were assumed. So, I mean,
It's how you get to
we all
that
agree
flat,
on the same thing.
it's how you get to that flat fee.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure we're all saying yes to the same thing.
Flat,
So if,
flat fee, we're giving them in advance what it is, we're at a risk of, it's gonna be plus or minus a little bit, but at least they can plan ahead of time, whereas the first one, in my mind, again, is we're tracking all the expenses as we go along, and after everything is said and done, we send them an invoice. Surprise, here's what the cost is this year. I mean, okay, we had an ambulance down there for 5.5 hours, not 6 hours, and so it's gonna be 5.5 hours.
and again, I'm gonna bring us back to the introductory paragraph on the memo, which is saying that this is just assessing where the council is on this at this moment. so that staff knows going into the discussions. And absolutely, they're gonna be having discussions to make it all work, I think, for the best outcome. Here.
And then, and of course, if at the April, whenever it occurs in April, there's a snag in terms of how this is going to work with how they budget, et cetera, staff can come back and say, billing after the fact is going to be best for this, or whatever. I mean, there's no question, Book Across the Bay is a significant event in our community. We want it to continue. It's an exciting event. A lot of local organizations benefit from it. The Music Booster Club benefits from it. Even the thrift store last year benefited from it. So, it's something that we want not only for the participants, but for those organizations that are helped because of Book Across the Bay. April is, very early in the planning for 23. When staff meets with them and says, the council really kind of thinks that, here's our menu, what do you want? And they say, well, no, we'd rather, just have billing after the fact. Staff can come back and say, well, guess what? Book Across the Bay, and, after talking about it, we agree that this is a better way to do it. So I don't think that we're, being unreasonable or mean to Book Across the Bay. I think it's just giving staff some direction for that April meeting.
Yeah,
And ample opportunity.
That at
Yeah,
all.
no, but
I'm
ample
looking for
opportunity.
confirmation from Scott and Mary.
I think there's ample opportunity to hear from Book Across the Bay and work with them.
Something we discuss again.
Exactly. If it doesn't work.
Okay?
Yeah.
I hate to do it, but I was gonna suggest that we amend the motion to say specifically that this is our preferred, but as long as we can come up with, a similar, an arrangement that's agreeable to staff that works, we can,
We can revisit that issue after the
okay,
discussion.
okay. So we'll stick with the motion as is. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Let's see. Our next item is discussion and action on special event request for Bike Across the Bay on February 20th, 2022, North Coast Cycling Association petitioner, and someone to hear from NCCA. Please step forward if you would like to on this topic. Oh, and the mic is up here, sorry. Right by Jen.
Okay, yeah, thanks. And then very interesting discussion about a much larger event. But we have a smaller request, but it does require staffing as well.
Sure, and you're welcome to stand behind the podium if you want to use that as a table there and just hold the mic over there.
Yeah, you can put yourself.
I made only 5 copies of our request for use of road access. So, and I didn't realize how many members there were on the.
Here, we might actually have that in our tab.
I think we have it. No? Is it the same as our highlighted?
671 West Lake Drive.
West Harborview, Lakewood Holman, 6th Avenue, Lake Drive.
Yep.
Got it.
The timing, an automated timing app. Riders will enter onto the course and through which they'll exit when they get back, and then it's just like the bookie where each individual's time is generated. So the route that we propose to have, registration for the event will be mostly in person, or at least partially in person down at the conference center. So we propose to access Harborview Drive from just west of the intersection down there, with Second, where Harborview intersects with Second Avenue West. So we continue then down past the intersection with Washington Avenue, then to West Holman, slash Lakeview Drive, and then, 4th Avenue West, or past 4th Avenue West, turning left onto, 6th Avenue West, which then becomes Lake Drive, and, then crossing 8th Avenue West to enter, Thompson's West End, Park. So mostly we have, roads which will be, crossed by the riders. At each of those intersections, what we want to have for safety purposes is a road block, just a saddle horse or whatever they call it.
Barricades.
Barricades, yes. And then we'll have volunteers who can, sort of direct traffic, what little traffic there may be, and make sure that the riders follow their course. And it would involve closing one lane of that access road for us, and the cars could go on the other half of it. Experience showed that there's not that much traffic, and typically our riders are coming in one at a time, or 2 or 3 adjacent, so we don't have a big pack that moves down. We don't know how many people we'll have, but we expect in the neighborhood of 100 or so riders. It would start, the race itself, well, registration in person. Most of our registration actually will be electronic. It'll all be done ahead of time. But there will be registration out at the conference center beginning at 10 o'clock, and our anticipated start time for the race would be noon, but with the option of having a sort of trickle through start for COVID purposes as well as the convenience. We'll have a staggered start for individuals about 11:30 perhaps. We don't have it worked out for sure. But individuals we have the choice of launching themselves onto either a 10K or a 20K course. But most of that would be on the lake. And the entrance point will depend upon weather, obviously, but we anticipate that we will enter right where the and last year they had that area cleaned out entirely by the time we showed up. So we're thinking that by 11:30 there'll be at least space for runners or riders to trickle past without complications and difficulties. So the traffic would, we'll leave it at that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this event too. Have you spoken with the police department at all about the option of just closing the streets? Would that be safer than trying to divide the road and have cars and big groups of bikes on one side? Or
to my knowledge, that hasn't been raised that way. I'm one of the board members, but he may have spoken to the police about that directly, but I'm not aware.
Roger is on live.
Yeah.
Oh, is he? I see our public works director nodding his head, and that might be a safer way to do it, is by just closing the roads instead of trying to get both things happening at once.
Yeah. I'm sure we would.
Roger, are you on? Do you want to?
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. You go ahead.
I just wanted to add a few comments. The event is, I could say, we're just on the coattails of across the bay, and our kind of goal is to provide an event that keeps people in town a little longer, something to do, and the Sunday morning traffic at that part of town after the big night has been almost non-existent. From the Harbor View over to Washington, of course, there's no real reason to go to Harbor View unless you're going to the hotel at the event center. And likewise, if you're going, towards the park, there's 3 cross streets, but there's really, those are residential neighborhoods, and there's virtually no traffic at all. So, and as Norm had mentioned, the start, we need to close the road for about 10 or 15 minutes at the beginning to make sure it's clear of traffic. And this year, because of COVID and the way things are done now, is that we do want to have a rolling start, it's called, so that riders can comfortably space themselves and socially distance. So in the past, we haven't really felt the need to have the total road closure because our event starts at noon or thereabouts, as Norm mentioned, and the 10K, a lot of people will be done with that if they're riding at better than 6 or 7 miles an hour in less than an hour. And the 20K, we'll usually see people done in an hour and a half. So we'll all be wrapped up by about 1:30. And so just by having volunteers posted at the barriers and then strategically moving the barriers, that's how we've handled it in the past. And there's been no reported problems or issues, largely because there's no traffic there. So, I mean, we'll do whatever, the council thinks is the safest, but that's sort of our viewpoint of it.
Okay, thank you. Jerry, did you want to say anything or?
I just think if that's your time frame, I always just say, shut it down at 11 and plan on reopening it at 3 and keeping everybody safe and it's not that big a deal. Like I said, there's not a lot of traffic volume in that area. On Holman itself, there's really no reason for traffic to be on there, and that would give you the ability to let your riders move up and down those roadways freely without having to worry. It's not a big deal to just put those barricades out at those intersections and just shut them off.
That sounds great. I think our initial intent is to minimize the complications, minimize the expenses, and minimize our interruption of things. And our riders can safely go on one lane, but it would be wonderful to simplify it and just have it shut off for a time frame. And that would lend a lot of versatility to us.
Okay.
But there too, if it's barricaded off, we could have volunteers at each of the stations to explain to the drivers why it's shut off and what the options would be.
Sure. And it's not too far to go around.
Yeah.
So with that, Scott?
I would have to point out, you're not gonna wanna shut off the Hardy Drive section. It's only gonna be the Holman Lakeview driving down into the park area.
Okay.
Oh, right.
Okay.
Well, or you have it closed or at the barricades can let people through if they're local traffic only or whatever. Whatever that detail would be. Do we have any motion on this item?
I move to approve the request by North Coast Cycling Association for the temporary street closing on February 20th, subject to access for local residents.
Also to include Thompson's Westin Park.
What's that?
The other part of the request is also for access to Westin Park.
Mary, I had seen your hand at the beginning.
Nope, we're good. I mean, it was gonna be a motion, so we're good.
Okay, and then, so a second then,
I second it.
okay. So we have a motion by Carl and a second by Tom. Any other questions or comments or discussion?
I just have, and I don't even want to bring this up really, but we just got through having a discussion about charging across the bay.
Sure.
And so the ride across the bay here, or bike across the bay is basically, and I just want to say that I'm fully in support of what you do, and I love that you're doing it. I just think when we talk about these things with folks across the bay, we need to consider, is this something that we would be charging everybody for?
Mary?
To your point too, Dave, is in, having been around the different races, whether by foot or by bike, in many cases, the event planners have picked up the barricades, put them up, taken them down, and returned them back up to the shed. So really, we've had no city crew involved in a number of the 5Ks, and have always been borrowed from the city crew, but with no city crew involvement, so.
I think what I'm more specifically getting to is that Look Across the Bay is going to pay to have Westin Park plowed. And Bike Across the Bay is then going to take advantage of a plowed area.
Oh, sure. However, do the bikes, would the bikes be able to do this event in some fashion regardless of whether the Book Across the Bay occurs?
Well, yes, we did do it a number of years without any involvement with Look Across the Bay. What we did, I think it was last year for the first time, was to use their course, which they groom and make rideable or skiable after the fact. And so that was like, well, it's out there, it's safe, it's easy to it's predictable, and which, as Tom Fitz with the book, Book Across the Bay says, the lake is a lake. Once they're done with using their course, it's out there. So it's a matter of us getting to it or from it. And
Yeah.
So just to clarify, it's city policy not to provide the plowed access to the lake. We never plow access to the lake. The only thing that we would plow for Look Across the Bay would be the event space. And I don't believe that. So the access to actually to the lake, the access to actually to the lake, mayor by ice fishermen. That's something that they just do on their own. For various reasons, the city does not do that. So.
Does that address your?
Yeah, I think if we're going to be imposing these kind of, and I know this isn't just for Book Across the Bay. We're going to be discussing it with them, but this will basically set a precedence for any activity that the city embarks in with another private entity.
We've already set precedent by all the events that we do throughout the year with the Chamber of Commerce and other nonprofit organizations. The difference, I think, is in the types of services that are being provided and the cost to the city of those services. So this event is requesting what all of the other nonprofit events generally request, which is closing the road, using some barricades to do so. That doesn't really have any cost to the city. The Book Across the Bay does and has, and we know what those costs are, whether they need police, public works, or ambulance. And this event is not requesting any of those things, I don't believe.
No, that's correct.
So I think we've already set precedent for this type of event through the Chamber of Commerce and other events that have requested a similar road closure for their event.
Right. Which is fine. Are you saying that though another event that may take place where the city extends our financial pile of money, we're not going to charge them? We're only going into an agreement with Book Across the Bay to charge for fees?
Well, it depends on whether or not the city is involved in the event, I guess. If you're talking about homecoming and Brown.
No, not necessarily. Well, I'm talking about any event. I mean, why should Book Across the Bay only get charged?
That's the only event that I'm aware of that is happening in the city that is requiring those types of services. That is costing the city thousands of dollars.
I understand. Next year, let's say something comes up.
Sure. Then we have to talk about it.
Another event.
If there's an event that is going to require the city services that are going to cost thousands of dollars, I think that's another time when we would talk about how we would recoup those costs. this, I don't believe is requesting any cost to the city with the request.
The barricades have been provided, so.
And the city already owns the barricade.
Yeah.
It's not a cost
Public
really.
Works is not putting the barricades up.
No.
Actually, when they had this summer, they just went out and picked everything up, took it out, put it out, brought it all back, put it back.
Yeah.
And we got everything back they took, so.
Okay.
just-
Okay. Jen first and then Tony.
No, I mean, I agree with Dave. I mean, we should at least do that double check. I mean,
Sure.
just to be fair, and I think that, you know, I mean, we just have to be careful that we accountable, and I think I was looking back through our notes, and we kind of had a little bit of discussion on this last month when we talked. And that's when, our chamber, Melissa, she talked a little bit about like brownstone days and different things that the city helps out in, and but, you know, it would be good for us to make sure that we're all clear on who we're gonna charge, what we're gonna charge for, you know, and not, this doesn't really relate too much to your request, just in general, you know, because I think it's just something we haven't done before, right?
And maybe once we come up with the agreement with the book across the bay, we use that as a model to set out a policy that spells it out for any event that would request those services.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, I wasn't asking the city charge Bike Across the Bay for anything right now. I just wanted to bring this up in case this is something next year that they can prepare, then next year that there may be some fees.
Sure.
That sounds perfectly reasonable.
Or if Bike Cross Bay gets really big, all of a sudden there's like 1,000 people that show up, and you gotta.
If this helps to differentiate the two, Book Across the Bay has applied for a special event application to use West End Park. Okay, there's a special event application that they've applied for. Within our current fee schedule, council can include additional fees beyond the $25 for the application with special events. So council already has the mechanism to charge fees for events like that. In this specific case with Bike Across the Bay, they're not applying for a special event application. They're just requesting road closures for their event, which is occurring at a private property. So the two are different.
Okay.
Understandable. I just, if there was any portion of West End Park that was being used and would only be used because it was plowed at someone else's expense.
And that's understandable.
Right, that's what I was getting at. I mean, if they're not using West End Park for anything other than to gain access to the lake, they can do that whether there's no one out there. So, yeah, I just want to clarify.
Okay, anything else on the motion that is on the table? Seeing that, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your time and for doing that event. Next item is discussion and action on revised state municipal financial agreement with Westin for phase 1 of the Mayfield Street project. So this is tab 6, but Scott, if you wouldn't mind giving an update on what we're doing here based on our discussions today.
So this is an agreement, and we have been discussing with the DOT revisions to this agreement since this past April. So the past 9 months, we've been looking at various revisions. And just dealing with a lot of state language and tweaking and different cost estimates and so forth. I can assure you that this is not going to be the final version of this document, of the additional versions that will be forthcoming and once the project would be bid and we have final figures and so forth. What I can tell you is that for the provisions that are listed here, we have mostly come to an agreement I had pointed out that there was a cost estimate change on the parking lanes and that the DOT would have to revise before it would be signed and everyone is agreeable to that. Since we put this in the packet, there were a couple questions that came up on page 4 of the agreement, specifically in item number 8, and it has to do with some of the specific language of, well, what exactly does that mean, and why do we have that there? And so it's a bit of a legalese and mumbo jumbo and gobbledygook and various state language. And so we are comfortable with this agreement, except for some provisions in 8A and 8G and 8H. So those are 3 areas where we're still looking at tweaking some of the language. And so this comes down to a level of your comfort level. If you want to give us some direction, you can say, you approve this revised document and allow staff to come to satisfactory agreements and those remaining provisions and carry on. Or you can say, we agree with the rest of the document, but you got to come back to us with those 3 sections. Or you can say, well, we're just not comfortable agreeing to this at this time. But if you have any other questions or issues with this document, we'd like to know, because I don't want to keep going back and forth. So if you've got issues with this document, you don't understand something, let us know so that we can get it clarified.
And having said that, or having heard that from Scott, I just want to add one more comment, which is, it is not uncommon for this document to be revised multiple times throughout the process. So even though we may say, that the council approves this and is acceptable to staff working on the final few details on this version, there may be at some point in the future another version, depending on things that may happen down the process, because this is such an extended process and there's so many moving parts to it. So I wouldn't guarantee that this is the final version of this that we see. Mary?
Can you tell us why these 3 are not particularly ironed out?
Well, we have been going back and forth with our consultant in discussing some of these details. Item 8A we're just kind of haggling over why we have this provision in here. The DOT is saying that it's statutory, and well, if it's statutory, why are we worried about it anyway? Item 8G is related to the issuance and review of utility permits for gas, electric, telephone, and fiber, and so forth. And so the question is, well, why would we be reviewing that? We don't deal with those particular types of items. So state, did you just give us authority to review utilities that we don't even own? And so we're just wondering why they have that language in there. And then 8H is given, we're saying, well, why do we have this in here? We're doing a water and sewer project on our own. The DOT says, well, yes, but we've got to make sure that we state this somewhere. When we're saying, well, it's already stated in state administrative code. So we're haggling over fine language details and going back and forth, and if you really want to know why I have headaches someday.
Yeah, okay.
After some of these.
So nothing more than what I'm reading, but just more of a clarification, simplification sort of.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
And they haven't always known the answer to our questions. I don't think they have people reading the details of these concepts the way that we have read the details of these concepts.
Sure.
And so they have to go back to their people and ask the questions, and then they get, so it's just been this ongoing churning of.
Got it.
I make a motion to approve the changes to the state municipal agreement for phase one Bayfield Street project, subject to continued negotiations with by the city staff.
Second the motion.
Motion by Carl and second by Karen. Are there any other questions, comments, or discussion on the motion? Jim?
So why did the parking lane charge go from 357 to 210?
It was, really based on revised estimates, and material costs that the state is working with now. That's not to say that that will be the final figure.
Yeah.
But that is the latest and greatest estimate that they have.
Well, if that's any indication of how things could change, I think we should just be flexible. Because I feel like that's like not like 20 grand, you know, it's like, whoa, I mean, those are big numbers to us. And so, I don't know, I don't have any issues. I know you guys are doing the best you can, but some of that fluctuation numbers is like, whoa, okay.
And part of it is we've really been kind of pushing to make the state quantify the areas and the specific areas within the project. You know, we have been haggling over, you know, the sidewalks, and we'll be probably coming to you with a terrace issue here at some point. And, you know, and it's like, okay, we've added the bump out, so does that remove the parking lanes? And so it's measurement of all of this area and all of these details as well, so.
Yeah, I could see us just having to be really flexible because we could get hit with things that we're just not prepared for here, I think. Because they think at a really different scale than what we think are big deals. So I think we're just gonna have to be ready.
And we really are making them toe the line on every detail.
Which is great. So thanks for all your hard work with that, because I can't imagine it being very easy to try to pin things down.
It's interesting.
It is interesting. Yeah.
Anything else on the motion? Seeing nothing, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then our final agenda item is discussion and action on resolution number 22-001, first one of the year, combining wards to a single polling place.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mary, second by Carl. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Our work is done, and we are adjourned. Have a good day, everybody.